showtime, people. The end, as we know it. The wrap up of what has otherwise been a pretty disappointing season of The Boys. But I think it's safe to say that for moi, personally, this was the finale that we were all waiting for. Eli, unfortunately, could not make it as he's actually currently on his way driving down to me, actually. But I'm joined once again by Dustin, the Duster, Mason. Dustin, before we get into it, your thoughts overall on this season of The Boys?
For me, it's the weakest season of The Boys easily. And you can only hope for it to get better in the fifth and hopefully final season.
Well, hopefully they did confirm this is the final season.
I hope to God. I hope to God.
Let's hope. Let's freaking hope. We don't need another. We don't need 50 seasons of The Boys. We don't. No. We really don't. Tune in for the last time that I'm going to be able to play this badass intro graphic that I created. Stay tuned.
You do.
All right, Dustin. So we made it. The episode, which was previously titled Assassination Run, and has now been since retitled, obviously so aptly titled. I believe the title that they left on the official profile was Season 4 Finale, because they're literally like, shit, we cannot call it this. Absolutely not.
That's what I saw.
Shit's gotten a little too real.
It's called Season 4 Finale. That was and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
What pussies.
Everything that's been happening in the real world. Recently, I mean, like, as far as, like, I don't remember the last time we had a show that felt like it was, like, writing itself in real time as far as things go.
Sure, but to put a disclaimer at the beginning of the episode, being like, oh, yeah, you're going to see some deaths that are
it's little... for the course at this point for shows to do that regardless of subject matter.
No, I mean, yeah, but, like, I mean, it's par for the course just to, like, be crazy on shows, and, like, you shouldn't, like, make too many parallels to real life, because then you'll sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist that they make fun of on shows like The Boys, you know? So it's like, I just think that's wild that they caved into the pressure, despite what unfortunately happened a few days ago with Trump and everything, but, like, which is awful. I'm not going to I'm not gonna Kyle Gass it and say, "Oh, they should have."
Trust me, Kyle Gass is not the only one.
Not
the only one.
And it's kind of embarrassing. Like, you can hate Trump as much as you want, but come on, you don't have to. Wishing death on people is another level of, like, all right, relax a little bit. But The Boys, on the other hand, is just. I just don't like this decision they're doing with, like, not sticking to their. Who cares if this episode was about, like, spoiler alert, the vice president getting murdered.
Spoiler alert. Yeah,
So, like,
I called it. Let's just get it out of the way now.
Yeah,
I called it a couple episodes ago. I had a feeling that of all the characters, it's funny because we've talked. I remember 2 years ago when we were talking about season 3, which we can agree the best season of the batch.
I agree.
The season where they really found their stride. And I guessed at the beginning of this season, it was kind of what they were setting up for. I'm like, okay, given the unpredictable nature of the show and everything, I'm like, Newman's not making it out of the season alive. You know, we were guessing back and forth. We were going back and forth. I'm like, okay, is it going to be Firecracker? Is it going to be Sage?
I thought it was going to be Firecracker.
A-Train? I think we were both kind of hoping it was going to be Firecracker. Unfortunately, so after this past episode. And unfortunately, it was confirmed. We say goodbye to Congressman, Vice President-elect Victoria Newman, who unfortunately realized the error of her ways a little bit too late. Am I the only one that feeling that she got exactly what she deserved? Like, I'm sorry, you don't just get to flip last minute, realizing all the shitty things that you've done, and then all of a sudden expect that everything's going to magically be okay.
To be fair, though, she is one of the least evil characters out of the antagonists on this show, I would say, and they built up enough empathy, and that performance works. Like, that's a good performance, and that's part of the reason why I'm mad they kind of killed her off, because at least whenever she came on, like, you're gonna get a well-acted scene, whether the material is bad or not, and she's pleasant to look at. So that's just, it's sad.
Always
that she's not. It's going to be sad not seeing her, but they, like you said, and what I was thinking more so was they had to kill off a big character.
They had to.
They really did. And they technically killed off like 2 big characters.
Mm.
Technically, like Grace is like sort of like a really pivotal character.
She's not a main cast member, though. She's a pivotal character in the show, but she's not a main cast member.
Correct.
Yes.
But you get my point. But
I do.
What do you think about all of this? Yeah.
So here's the thing. And I'm glad that John actually, who was supposed to be on the show, but unfortunately couldn't because he was literally stuck in the middle of, I believe it was 5 flights or something like that, where I agree. It's the weakest season. So you would think it's the second weakest season. For me, it's the weakest season, for sure.
What's the worst to you then?
Yeah, I'm actually interested, John. What is the weakest season for you?
Is it the first season?
For me, it's this season, for sure. Because the way that I kind of go at it is season one was a revelation. It was a shock to the system. It came out 3 months after Avengers Endgame, and it was, I think, the perfect antithesis that we needed. We're like, okay, we just spent a decade with arguably some of the best superhero properties that we've seen, finally seeing the superhero genre medium elevated to the level that it should be as far as having the respect, love, admiration, and technical craft put into it that it had not gotten. And we saw like it at its ultimate idealized form. Now we're going to take that, we're going to flip it on its head, and we're going to present it as if it was superheroes in the actual real world. And I thought that for the most part, the first season, while flawed, did a very, very good job with establishing kind of this very cynical take on essentially what if superheroes were these bought out corporate puppets for the organization that essentially runs the world. You know, it was a not so veiled parody of Amazon, essentially. Then season 2 comes out a year later. We're in the middle of COVID lockdown. It's kind of one of the only things we have to look forward to. They introduce a brand spanking new character, and they definitely up the level of like, as far as like, okay, we showed you what we're capable of. Now we're going to take that up a notch. And season 2 for me, it didn't work as well as season 1 did. It had some episodes that were better than others, but I thought it was very inconsistent. But by the time we got to season 3, that's when it's like, okay, we know exactly what we're doing. And I thought the addition of Jensen Ackles in that season really, really elevated that to this form. This one, I do tend to agree with you. I didn't dislike this season as much as you did. But this season, my biggest problem with it is it definitely got a little bit too big for its britches. And even though it had a very clear direction that it was going for, I definitely think that it kind of got a little bit lost in the whole trying to be the real world thing. That, again, was held basically very closely by the fact that it was doing what the comics did. Again, while not adapting it to a T, the comics do end with Homelander leading a soup takeover of the world, and this arc of the story ends with him in the White House.
Really? In the comics? In
the comics, yes, that is how the comics end. So it's not like they're deviating super far, but in terms of them writing like, I guess, towards parodying the real world, I'm gonna say, especially with how it coincided with certain things in the real world, it got a little bit too real, to say the least. And I think that's kind of where it lost people. Not to mention there's just some of the writing choices as well. Particularly,
no, it's the deliberate choice of making like the dialogue so like zeitgeisty and like relevant, and like just trying to make so many parallels to Trump and like Trumpites or like anything like that, and it just distracts from the ultimate like satire of the show. Like, it's just too on the nose after a while. And I feel like this season's biggest detriment is that dialogue that just honestly just takes you out of the moment, and it doesn't feel as natural as it did in the previous seasons. It just feels like it's poking you in the wound.
What I will say to that is that what I give this season is, this is probably, especially in the hindsight of after having watched this episode, this season for me definitely had the least amount of deviation from where it was going. It had a few moments where I was like, I don't exactly know where this is going. And certain character choices and character additions and such that I was like, okay, like, what are we doing here? Like I said, Firecracker and Frenchie for me are probably the 2 weakest links. Sister Sage kind of supposed to be crowned as like the smartest character in the room, but then making a series of decisions that make no sense. Just certain things. This season to me was the most indicative of forcing the characters into positions in order to maintain the plot, rather than letting the characters and their actions determine the story. And I feel like in this episode in particular, it was finally the instance of, okay, the characters are finally taking a little bit of their destiny back all around. And we see the impact go all around for all the characters. We finally see essentially this version of The Empire Strikes Back, where the characters are at their lowest. Again, the soups have won. The soupocalypse is effectively happening ultimately. And while the characters try to stop it at the end, I mean, in a way, the only character that is actually smart in this episode is Singer. you know, in the sense of where if you guys had just killed Newman when you had the chance, none of this would have happened, you know, but they dicked around. They were trying to figure out all this other stuff. Butcher majorly fucked up early on when he tried to make the deal with Newman for the virus, and now he's suffering the consequences of that. And then ultimately, I feel like the characters are driven to a point where there is literally no turning back. You know, it ends, they're all arrested except for Butcher. Butcher's let Jeffrey Dean Super Tumor Morgan just drive his actions completely, and now we are where we are. I want to start with the Ryan bit of it all. You know, Ryan, the worst character in this entire show, but ultimately, again, it's the push-pull back and forth of Butcher and Homelander. I am interested to see where this is going to go as far as, you know, at the end of the day that he's going to be the one that is going to, like, pull Butcher back from the edge. He's the only one. But at the same time, it's also like...
He's going to have to kill Homelander.
Well, he has to. If Butcher doesn't kill him first.
No, it's going to be Ryan, whether Ryan likes it or not. You know, and the way that they keep, like, drone it on, like, he's seen his father at his worst, I would say, at this point, and I know he knows his dad's capabilities and how manipulative he is. I mean, unless he's just completely stupid, you know what I mean? But, like, for him to overreact, and it, like, just what does Grace say right before she dies too? That she said something like a hole, like a black hole or something. And I was like, and under my breath, I was like, yeah, you're gonna have a hole in the middle of your chest if you don't shut the fuck up.
Yeah, literally.
And she gets killed like 20 seconds after I thought that, and she gets instead shoved into a wall and breaks her fucking neck on impact. So
yeah, it's one of those deliberate. It's kind of another one of those deliberate moments where it's like, okay, the plot is forcing this to happen, but at the same time, I feel like even more than at the end of season 2, where season 2, my biggest problem between this finale, the biggest difference between this finale and season 2 finale, and I think this finale actually did it better than season 2, is season 2, it felt like they pulled a Hail Mary out of their ass.
What was the season 2 finale?
The season 2 finale was right after, remember, John Dolman's character was going to testify. That was the first time that we saw Newman's head popping scene, and the boys were literally about to go on a rampage and declare war, and then Becca shows up.
Yeah, and the last scene was
the reveal of Newman after she kills Goran Visenjek, the head of the church.
Yeah, I automatically like that finale more.
Really?
Automatically. Yeah, it built up the next season great. It was a great like reveal plot twist of like, holy shit, Newman was the fucking one.
Well, especially because Newman was it wasn't even just that like Newman was such a vocal opponent of Soups. It was the fact that she was held in the background and like you didn't even realize she was a thing until it happened.
She was in the background enough, but they focused on her enough also. And I feel like that performance was just at a perfect pitch that by the time they did that reveal and we see her powers for the first time, and then in the next season, in season 3, like that, it just all came together for me. And I feel like it's been slowly falling apart ever since the finale of season 3.
Yeah, it's tricky to say the least because for me
they went the dark route with her character, unfortunately.
Yeah, they did. And so bringing it back to Grace and Butcher and the Ryan thing, right? Where so the whole thing is that like Butcher has been fighting this entire time, right? He's been telling Jeffrey Dean Tumor Morgan like we can trust Ryan. He's our ace of the hole. Even though Jeffrey Dean Morgan has been like, listen, like there's no way that you're going to be able to turn this kid. You need to get rid of this kid now, or he's going to turn on you, and you got to use this virus. And
well, that's just his that's his psyche. Like it's not
Jeffrey Dean Morgan established he's not a real character. He's a manifestation of the super tumor.
Like he was a real person, but he's just an imaginary figment.
Right.
That Butcher, like it's like his like devil on his shoulder.
Exactly. So I guess just when Ryan kills Grace, as far as that being the decision that finally sends Butcher over the edge, as far as like, okay, we have no choice. I've got nothing left. Like when I guess it's just because that's the first time that he sees Ryan kill somebody, right? And it's the fact of, okay, he's not an innocent anymore. Like as Butcher, Butcher I just realized something. That's the first time that he's seen Ryan kill someone.
Right.
But it's not the first time that Ryan has killed someone.
Right. That's true.
You know?
But like, no, just the fact that like he killed somebody that wanted to protect him. That's kind of what solidified it from now on. I guess Becca is no longer going to become like one of the like she's never going to come back in the imaginations anymore. Good, because I hated that whole thing.
Yeah,
but that's I feel like this is the most contrived season by far. And as impressed as you are by the finale, and I am like impressed by certain elements, I'll give you that. Like when the superheroes are starting to like kill people in the thing. While it's rushed, it does have like those brief moments of like actual intense, like holy shit, we're in the moment, we're like a fly on the wall almost, and like, and then it's killed by the
murder boner.
I have a murder boner.
Murder boner. Yeah.
We're an immature bullshit show now. It's like, and
again.
I know like everyone's like, oh, well, it's always had that sophomoric edge to it, but they don't know how to balance it this season. And the darker they want to go with the story, the less they have to rely on the gross out, oh yeah, bro, humor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just getting distracting, and it's just very displeasing.
Yeah, you mean when the deep punches a hole through the writer's head?
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. Like, but preceding that, he has to say some bullshit, like insecure thing. That's just so. And it's just, it doesn't.
Like, oh, you're a writer. You get paid like shit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, oh, boom. It's like he's just a complete social. I can't wait to see most of these characters just die a pitiful death.
Oh yeah, no, and they're
really
gonna die in the worst ways possible. You know,
hopefully.
Yeah, especially also given the fact that, like, arguably, I think despite another thing about this episode is the best character this season, who's had arguably the best arc this season, A-Train, nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found.
Way to not even tease him in the fucking post-credit scene either.
Right.
They have to be like, oh yeah, by the way, a character you thought died isn't dead. Great tease. Great tease, boys.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. We knew Soldier Boy wasn't dead. They told us that at the end of season 3 that he wasn't dead.
Yeah, right. But like, I hate that they had to keep it like a secret the whole season. Just so, like, this whole season was just filler to like a buildup for the next season.
Yes.
It didn't feel like an actual, like, fleshed out, well done, thought out.
That's exactly what this is, because everything now has to be Infinity War and Endgame. The penultimate has to be the buildup for that. It's the same thing with Stranger Things. It's the exact same thing with Stranger Things. Things this most recent season did.
The thing about Stranger Things last season that was really annoying was that it was just way too fucking long.
That's true.
That's the least of this show's problems, is the
Yes.
length and the pacing. Is that's usually the best part of the show, is that
Yes.
it's not too long and it's excellently paced, whether the episode's good or bad.
Yes.
9 times out of 10. But yeah, I don't know, dude. This season's just been fucking annoying, and I appreciate that you like what this episode was going for, but it's a little too late.
And I'm with you. And the thing is, that seems to be the going consensus across the board, is that almost everybody is like, weakest season yet, hell of a finale. Which, again, I give it credit for that, because the fact that this show can still lock people in that way, given the overall, like I said, these thoughts are not exclusive to you and me. A lot of people have thought this. Like I said, the whole firecracker character, like, literally, like, when the Supes are rampage across Vought, I'm like, what the hell can this bitch even do powers-wise? Why doesn't she use them?
I don't know why she was even allowed to be in the 7 to begin with, because she never... I said this when we were recapping an earlier episode, Dominic, right? Is like, she didn't live up to her end of the deal in that episode.
No, she didn't.
When her
whole
died.
way of... And her whole way of getting Homelander under her control was literally just, oh, here's some breast milk, and then she can't even deliver on that because it's like having an adverse effect on her now.
Because she just knew that that he had a thing for breast milk. How does she know that?
Right, that's not exactly common knowledge.
That's what that's another thing I didn't bring up in the last one. But seriously, like, Sister Sage said, yeah, if you do this for us, you're in. But she didn't end up being successful at it. So why would she be allowed in? That's the biggest plot hole of this season, and that character sucks.
I agree. Yeah, no, I like I said, I talked about the two, like, as much as I did enjoy this episode, I still had two major flaws with that, being, unfortunately, the two new characters they introduced this season, Firecracker and Sister Sage, because those two are kind of a little bit contrived and kind of just, again, inserted to where the plot needs them.
Sister Sage is the most annoying. I think she's more annoying than Firecracker. Firecracker is just a waste. Sister Sage is just there to be like, oh yeah, that was my plan all along, and insert shitty pop culture reference here. That's all she's there for.
Like, because I'm just trying to think of, it's like, okay, even if you're the smartest person on the planet, and you're theorizing, like, that this is how it's going to go and everything, like, okay, Newman dying is going to be our Hail Mary, and that's how we can get Singer arrested for his, like, anti-soup agenda and push forward, like, our pro-soup agenda, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking, like, how in the hell would she have known, it's not, again, it's very deep state CIA knowledge about Butcher's tumor, that's not exactly common knowledge, and there's just been a whole lot of contrivances this entire time, because I'm just like,
well, she's just super perceptive, Dominic.
Oh, of course.
That's what it is. She just knows everything. She knows Ashley just is wearing a wig. She could just tell that.
Well, in fairness, anybody could figure that out. Apparently,
apparently, even though
apparently,
whatever. That's a good fucking wig. Then I don't.
Yeah,
it's only a
here's
shitty.
my question.
It's only a shitty looking wig when they cut away and like get her a wig on. You know.
Here's
what
my
I mean?
question: did Butcher and her ever actually have any on-screen face-to-face time once this season?
Who?
I don't. Sister Sage and Butcher.
Sister Sage and Butcher.
I don't think they did, even at the convention, because remember, at the convention, when she ambushes them, Butcher leaves and then comes back to save them. I don't think they ever have any on-screen time. So how the fuck would she have known about Butcher's tumor? Unless Homelander told her, because Homelander knew about the tumor.
Good writing. This is the writers of She-Hulk coming in, I think.
Literally. And she literally just comes in at the last minute after Homelander's finished with his latest temper tantrum. And she's like, oh, this was my plan all along.
Let's talk about another contrived thing. Another contrived thing is that fucking Shifter character.
Yes, I was going to bring that up next. The Shifter character. Like,
what a waste
the one good thing that came out of that. The one good thing that came out of that, we finally get to see Erin Moriarty cook. Because Erin Moriarty, really good actress. She's kind of been a wet blanket this season. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna be the first person to say it. She's had nothing to do. She's just been miserable. Just been righteous for righteous sake. My powers aren't working.
She's been better the last few episodes.
Yes, the last few episodes were progressively getting better with her. And at the very least, she does magically, her powers kick in right when everybody's getting arrested at the end. And she manages to fly off and escape. And everything. Finally, we get something.
Yeah, everything has been so dour this season. At least she gets to fucking escape.
Right? She finally gets a win, and the whole...
Yeah, and she can come back and save the day, and she's going to have a big part of getting the boys out of prison.
Yes,
probably.
definitely.
So,
I'm already predicting her and A-Train are going to... Are going to break them out easily. Right? It's the only shot, because think about
it. I loved A-Train this season. He was like the one consistently good thing, and they still underused the shit out of him.
Yes.
And not even in this episode. He should have had like his own episode, I feel like.
Yes, I agree.
A la when Homelander went to the lab.
Yes.
I feel like A-Train should have had like a similar episode. He should have had an arc like that in this episode, I feel like.
I agree.
Instead of that fucking Shifter bullshit, which ultimately, and my biggest, this is one thing you didn't respond to in our messages. How the fuck can she just get strangled to death, but then get shot 17 times?
More great. Well, because remember, their skin is bulletproof, but they still need oxygen.
Good writing.
Rules of the show. Again, I'm not saying it's good, but again, there are the rules of the show. So,
all right.
Because the other thing that I was going to say is this is the first time, probably since season 2, where the boys, they don't have any allies left. Grace is dead. Singer's arrested. Newman's dead. Like, the Jennifer Esposito character from the first season got her head blown off by Newman in that first season.
Oh,
remember her? Yeah. They have no allies left.
I was thinking, I was like, oh yes. Jennifer, she was one of the agents in the first season.
Yes, she was.
I like her a lot. Yeah.
Yep. And then they killed her in the first episode of season 2.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
That's when the show was starting to like take a turn for me. I'm like, okay, this is getting like actually
right.
Like, interesting.
And then when they impaled the whale 2 episodes later, I'm like, oh hell yeah! I'm like, we're in.
The season rules. Like season 2 kind of rules. It was starting to like, and the humor was working. The credits were perfect. Chef's kiss.
Yes.
It's like everything about this show, like even the Nirvana needle drop this episode didn't give me a murder boner. You know what I mean? Like it didn't give me a musical boner at all. Like it was just like, you think it's so cool. You think it's so cool that you could just play the instrumental for most of it and then go into the actual song. It wasn't earned. In a great finale, that would have been earned, but this wasn't earned.
Yeah. What do we think Ashley's powers are going to be?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I was sort of telling you this. I think it's like sort of like a mega mind kind of thing. I think
that's what a lot of people have been talking about.
People are saying like, oh, she's going to destroy the Deep, perhaps, but I think she's going to be a main adversary for Sister Sage.
I hope so. Because honestly, like it's funny because Ashley is like the one definition, and we haven't seen this in a while, where she's a joke character that they elevated to main character status, right? And kind of it just stuck around, and it's just progressively they've been dunking on her more and more and more. And this season she was like at an all-time low, like when you finally saw the Deep standing up to her and everything. And now I definitely think that if there was ever a time for her to like really start to take some agency on her own, like it would be now, especially after, ironically, both the dudes that she was fucking in the past couple seasons are both dead now. Cameron Coleman and Tech Knight are both dead. So I'm like, if there was ever a time for her to reclaim some agency,
Yeah, what
it would
happened to
be now.
PJ Bird?
Oh, well, he's presumably he got killed when the boys were doing their raid of the Vought Tower,
Oh, that's right.
presumably, you don't see it,
We
but
don't
yeah.
see it, but okay, that's still a little red herring, I think.
Yep, little red herring.
Yeah, I don't see her living through the end of the show, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, like, I see her getting her comeuppance,
Yeah.
like getting her payback, I would say,
Mhm.
like, on, like, certain characters.
Yeah, definitely.
And she'll probably get killed by Homelander, ultimately.
Probably.
she'll probably
But
get
as
raped.
long as she's the one that kills the Deep, it's going to be either her or
Oh,
A-Train that
yeah.
kills the Deep, but definitely her more than
I
likely.
think it's gonna be her, and I think she's gonna kill Sister Sage.
Yeah, which would be cool because, Sage, I'm just like, no. The two new additions this season were terrible.
But however, though, this turn that they want to make with that character isn't as compelling as it should be, because, like you said, they started her as like such like a joke character, and now they want to, and she's just been making the worst decisions throughout this entire series. Fuck this season, just the whole series.
The whole show. Like, she has made herself.
She's
like,
one of the most unlikable characters.
Yes. Well,
She's
the
so
interesting
unlikable.
the interesting thing about her is that that's another character that, again, by sheer force of will, similar to Newman, it's like, no, everything that you are suffering, like the whole ripping her hair out, the anxiety and everything, I'm like, you put yourself in this position. You are the one that sold your soul to the devil. You could have quit years ago. And now, and the fact that she
say a few episodes ago that she had like an opportunity to leave and for another job
to leave for Disney, and then
like, what the fuck? Like,
Right.
why didn't you just do that? You're not going to get killed at Disney, most likely. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't know.
But there's not soups that work there, is my point. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That she has to like communicate with 24/7.
Right.
But like, she was never a likable or empathetic character to begin with. So it's going to be like satisfying on one level just to see other superheroes die. But on a narrative level, it's not that satisfying for me.
Right. Now, Homelander exposing Newman on live TV, like, I'm just like, okay. Like, I'm just like, okay, so typical. I'm like, I wish we could have done this seasons ago as far as just like Homelander finally like just losing it, I mean,
I get why they waited this long. That's the point of this show, is that he gets nuttier and crazier and more irrational each season, and it's more unpredictable, even though it is in turn predictable for us, the viewers. But like, hopefully the next season he'll go even crazier, but in a more like grounded and like logical way than and less typical way than he has been doing things, and the writing has been giving him. Because it's becoming repetitive. As great as that performance is and continues to be, it's just become repetitive.
Yes.
Sorry.
And finally, the end scene. Oh man, it's chef's kiss. It's what the episode was building to. When again, Newman is like, she's finally like, okay, I'm finally ready to come over to the side of good. I've gone too far. I've realized like everything that I've done at the last possible minute. And Butcher, it kind of is perfect karmic resolution that finally like Butcher and Newman have both reached their endpoints, and Butcher's like,
even though that death is so like that death, it's like, I get why he did it, but even as a viewer, I went like, oh shit. I was walking on my way to work. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, literally. The same thought process. Same thought went through my mind too. I was literally I was like, okay, like she's not walking out. As soon as he walks in and he's given himself over to the devil, and we know it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan behind the wheel. And I'm just like, oh
that's
God,
how
what's
you
going to
pull
happen?
off a character death, I would say. Like,
I agree.
It was a little bit rushed, but they still, like, that performance overall was great. And like her comeuppance, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you just eloquently articulated it. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, and also, I know you want to talk about karma. Everything that she did was to try and keep her daughter away. And where did her daughter end up?
In the
same fucking place where she was raised.
I'm
like, you did it to yourself, Vicky. You did it to yourself.
And then where's Samir? And then Stan Edgar.
Right, that's the thing. No Samir, no Stan Edgar, right?
Yeah.
Right. But honestly, like after seeing that kid, and like, nah, that kid deserves to stay in Red River.
Dude,
that kid deserves to stay in Red River.
I just gotta say, I like that Newman character as like as a semi-antagonist, and it was a great performance.
Yes,
she
will be missed.
She got what
she
deserved for killing Goring Vizhniak.
Yes, agree. No, R.I.P. Newman. What's it called? Like I said, she was a male character in the comics, and she died in a similar way in the comics. So yeah, it was like I said, unfortunately, you reap what you sow. You make your bed, you sleep in it, and unfortunately, she suffered the consequences. And as
she's sleeping with Jack Quaid.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Oh man, Jack Quaid is killing it right now. Honestly,
Jack Quaid's doing good, man.
Jack Quaid's doing very well. He was in Scream. He's working with Nolan. He's on season 4 of this show. He is killing it right now. He's the only nepo baby to admit, like, yeah, being a nepo baby's like great. You know, he's like the only one.
Not his exact words, but
not his exact words. I'm paraphrasing, but
he's like, no, I get it. I get why I have that label, but like, you know.
And then the final,
I love doing what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like a chill guy, but I stand by what I said the last episode. They underserved him this season, and they kind of fucked his character.
I agree, especially in this episode. I felt it where it's like, and he's giving him all this shit. How many times did you fuck her? It's like
I didn't know it was her.
It was you. Like,
yeah, it's like what? How can you blame him?
Yeah.
How can you blame him?
How would you be happy at me at the fact that I realized that you were not you when I did?
Exactly,
instead of just giving endless shit for it.
Right. The fact that exactly. And his speech at the end was cool and everything. And it was a good summation of what he went through in the season. But at the same time, it was a little too like on the nose.
The entire definition of the entire season, too little, too late.
It was just so on the nose. It was like, okay, so I didn't even need to watch the whole rest. You just summed up what you just went through the whole season.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's like, but and then the Rosemary DeWitt thing too. Do you think that's gonna play like a part? Because she does work for a branch of VAR. Right?
I know, but honestly, considering the fact that after the Huey funeral run, we haven't seen her since, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last time we see her. If that was the last time we saw her, I think that was only there.
Make any sense. They would have to.
I agree, but given the caliber of writing that's been happening this season, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised
either if they keep making it contrived and make her a fucking antagonist in the next season. I would not be surprised one bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know.
But would she be for her son being in prison for this shit?
Right.
Because that's my question. Because it's like, you're going to be eradicated too, bitch.
Right.
Like, they're going to kill all the humans.
Right.
How are all the humans going to, like, if anything, I'll give the season credit for this. It's building up to probably the grand finale, the epic grand conclusion of this crazy ass show we've been watching forever now. It's like, what is going to happen?
5 years? 5 years since it premiered.
How are they going to defeat the Supes? And if they do, how are they going to rebuild their civilization? You know what you know, it's like I don't know what they're going to do, and they're probably going to fuck it up.
Well, I'll tell you how they do it in the comics. The comics is Butcher goes nuts, kills the rest of the boys, kills Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and Kimiko.
And Huey?
No, not Huey. Not Huey. He's the only survivor. What's it called? Homelander pretty much kills Queen Maeve. What's it called? Huey kills A-Train. I don't remember. I think the Deep actually survived, but the Deep is much different in the comics than he is in the show. And then obviously Black Noir is revealed to be the Homelander clone. The Homelander clone kills the original Homelander. Butcher then kills that Homelander and then convinces Huey to kill him by claiming that he killed his dad. That's how the comics ends. And that just ends. That's where the comics ends. Needless to say, I don't think that's what we're going to be getting, to say the least.
Well, no, that wouldn't make any sense at all. None of that.
Yeah.
But because he just forgave A-Train, his dad's already dead. Queen Maeve's dead. None of that would happen. But like, what I heard, now what I wanted to ask you is, like, I heard the boys comics actually sucks.
I cannot say for certain because I haven't actually read them. This is only based off of the plot summation that I've gotten. But what I've heard is
crazier and it's shittier.
It's crazier and it's much, much more cynical because Garth Ennis, the author, hates superheroes, like hates them. And from what I've heard, he's the type of author that will go with he will try to prioritize like the joke and satire over the actual plot, is what I've heard. Okay. You know, like
what this show has been doing,
right?
To be honest with you, probably to a lesser degree than the comics.
Right.
But,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I guess my only question is coming out of this season before we wrap up and get out of here is kind of what like where do we go from here as far as like, so we obviously know the boys are in jail, and of course I love the montage of like the different heroes that are arrested. Like, we got Kate and Sam back from Gen V, and they took out Frenchie and Kimiko. We finally heard Kimiko speak. It's like, oh, now she speaks.
Yeah,
Finally.
I hated
finally.
that. I hated
Finally.
that. I was like,
That's
all right,
the moment that
now-
finally gets
now
her to
you
speak.
talk. Now, are you gonna do this? Are you gonna do your little cutesy every season
Maybe.
now? Are
Maybe.
you gonna do that? Or are you gonna
Yeah.
talk like a normal person?
Yeah. And of course, who's the one that takes in Mother's Milk? Fucking love sausage. Fucking love sausage. And then Huey gets arrested by the first head popper, what's called from season 2, the bald chick. So there was that.
Mother's Milk was done dirty this season.
I agree.
Oh yeah, let me ask you about that bald chick. When was the last time we saw her?
Season 2, at the end of that episode.
At the end of what episode?
The episode with the asylum where she was first introduced. That was the last time we saw her.
Yeah, but like, what was the conclusion of that in the
The conclusion of that was they brought Lamplighter, Sean Ashmore's character, to grace.
Oh, he was good. He was really good.
And then they killed himself in the next episode.
Yeah, Sean Ashmore was terrific actually on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess she is an entity because I was confused. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen her before, but like what? I forgot if she was like for them or like again. I forgot. Like I haven't rewatched the last few seasons in a while, so I'm sorry if I'm rusty about it. But like I definitely remembered who that was.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and I guess just kind of the only question, like, where Ryan is going to end up as far as that goes, right? Because obviously we can assume that Annie will find A-Train and they'll break out the rest of the boys.
Yeah, they didn't show Ryan. Where did Ryan? What happened after he killed Grace again?
Ryan just left.
Oh yeah,
he just left. Yeah, so who knows where he is? And then Butcher, like, where does he go? Like, and also, is there any of Butcher left in there, or is it just Jeffrey? I'm assuming there is, and I'm assuming that he is going to have a come to Jesus moment in next season when he inevitably gets his fight to the death that he's always wanted with Homelander.
Sure, but do you think this show is actually going to like go against the grain and be like, no, Ryan is going to join his dad and they're going to rule the world forever?
No, because that would be too straightforward. And with that character, the show has to be the constant push back and forth. Oh, he's with Butcher. Oh, he's with Homelander. Oh, he's with Butcher. Oh, he's with Homelander.
I hate that bullshit, though.
I agree with you. I'm with you. I hate that. I hate that. It's because it's fake tension is what it is. It's fake tension.
It's exactly fake tension, Dominic. Perfectly said.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. Yep. So with that being said, Dustin, that was The Boys season 4. It's been interesting. It's been an interesting push-pull back and forth for these last 6 weeks, but we are finally done. I finally get my Thursday nights back.
We covered everything, you think?
We did. I think we covered everything. That's pretty much everything that needs to be covered.
They did nothing with Frenchie.
No. Pointless.
Frenchie
again,
Frenchie was
reduced him to plot device. It's like, oh, make the virus. Oh, you're guilty about killing this dude's family.
This show is just like, this season, a lot of the scenes for me was just like, okay, give us what we want, you're dead.
Pretty much.
You know what I mean?
Pretty much. So if you had to rate the season out of 5, what are you giving it?
High 2 out of 5.
I'm going to go 3 out of 5 overall for the season because the finale saved it. It was a 2.5 for me up until this point.
You still think it's the best episode of the whole show? That's what you messaged me.
I do have to consider it, definitely. But for me, this was a really, really strong episode, I think. Despite all of our flaws and nitpicks,
that it is rushed.
It is rushed, but again, I blame that on the season, not this episode. It's very clear that like this was the episode that they wanted to do, and everything else was just filler build up until it, you know? Yeah. And for the moments that we got in this episode that were amazing, and we got some amazing, like when I think back about like what some of the defining moments of this show are when it's eventually said and done, like a lot of them are going to come from this episode. And that's no small thing.
I thought you were going to say this season overall.
No.
Good.
This season promised us flying fucking sheep. And that episode was such a letdown. Such a letdown.
This is the worst season by far.
It's the worst season of The Boys, for sure.
Because it's been consistently one of the better shows on television for me, and it's one of the more exciting shows and one of the more bold shows. And I just think it's just become a little immature for my taste.
Needless to say, I don't know if I'm going to be doing this in depth of a recap when it comes to the final season, which especially since they're not doing
if it's great,
right?
Like, let's give it the first episode. If the first episode is like leagues better than the first episode of this season, which I have a feeling, Dominic, it is.
Let's hope. Let's hope.
Let's give it a shot.
We'll give it a shot. We'll give it a shot at the very least. It's just, again, every time we do one of these week-to-week recaps, except unless it's Succession, they always end up disappointing. Every single time. We have a history of it on this podcast.
Pretty much, yeah.
Every single time we've been ready, okay, this show's got us. We're going to do a week-to-week recap, and it sucks.
Even the worst episode of Succession is better than, like,
well, that's what I'm saying.
Boys.
You
like,
know,
and I'm on Serialized, by the way. I don't know if you follow me, Dominic.
I do not, but you should. But I will follow you. I'm assuming it's still at Dustin Rhymes.
Dustin Rhymes 95. Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out. Selena Gomez got her first Emmy nomination.
And first Emmy nomination. That's right. That's right.
I'm just happy about that. That's nice.
Yes, definitely.
Overdue. They snubbed Mulaney though.
Yes, they did.
They snubbed him.
They snubbed him.
The Bear. Yeah.
The Bear. Yep. Who else did they snub? What? First of all,
there wasn't
way too many nominations for the morning show. Way too many nominations.
I could already tell that. Like, was Duplass even in?
Yes.
A lot of this season.
I wouldn't know. I haven't seen it.
Oh, you didn't watch it?
Haven't seen it. Have not seen since halfway through season 2, where they're like, "Oh, we're doing COVID this season." I'm like, "Fuck this, I'm out."
Season 2 was awful.
Yeah, I couldn't even make it through that season halfway through when they literally had Carell drive himself off a cliff.
Yeah.
Stop it. Like,
they were.
I'm
that
you're bad.
episode was literally telling Matt Lauer to kill himself.
Yes.
I'm convinced.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. Without question.
It's just like, hey, Matt Lauer, kill yourself.
Kill yourself. Literally.
Go to Italy and kill yourself.
Yeah, literally. But I like the Reservation Dogs nominations. I like the Slow Horses nominations. You know, some shows that were very, very overdue. Matt Berry getting a nomination. Did not see that coming. I was very happy with that.
The who?
Matt Berry for What We Do in the Shadows. Very happy about that.
No, that was cool. But the more surprising one, and the one that made me think of you, was the kid from Reservation Dogs.
Yes, him too. I was very, very happy with those couple nominations.
He's going to be the co-lead in Warfare.
Yes, which hopefully will be better than Civil War. I'm hoping.
I mean,
better.
We're overdue for a great war movie.
Yes.
Like a great buddy war movie.
Yes.
Like, and this has an excellent seeming ensemble. And he's like one of the co-leads, and he plays the co-writer, co-director of the movie.
And Sterling Harjo is who did Reservation Dogs is co-directing this movie. And like I said, Reservation Dogs is honestly one of the best shows of the last couple of years. So,
wait, is he? I thought it was Alex Garland.
No, yeah, Alex Garland is co-directing. I'm pretty sure with Sterling Harjo.
No, it's Alex and Ray Mendoza is the guy.
Oh,
and Ray Mendoza is who DeFaro Wantu is playing.
Oh, okay. Well, why did I think that it was?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I'll look it up.
Charles Melton and Joseph Quinn and Michael Gandolfini are in
That's
it.
A good cast. That's a really good
cast. The guy from Hitman that played her ex-husband is in it. So, like, yeah, that has a cool looking cast.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good show. But regardless, like I said, The Boys, it's over with. Hopefully, we get season 5 next year because I don't want to have to wait another 2 years for this season.
I'm sick of that.
I'm really sick of that.
It makes sense because like the visual effects are like probably the best.
True, but
show, and that takes like a lot of time.
True,
right?
But you know how I know that that's not the reason? Because they put out season 2 a year after season 1. That's why.
True. That's true.
Yep. Season 2, the 2 to 3 delay was because of COVID, and the 3 to 4 delay was because of the strikes and Gen V.
All right, but like maybe this isn't the case, but like this is more like in general of like television stars, but like the longer like a really successful show like this goes on, like and like some certain stars of the show like get bigger and get more opportunities, like a Jack Quaid, like maybe that like sort of delays the production, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Because Jennifer Aniston did plenty of movies during Friends.
Right, exactly. So like it depends on the production really. But like I said, with that being said, that is it. That is our recap of The Boys season 4. Thank you guys for tuning in week to week as you guys have. It has certainly been a wild ride to say the least, despite the varying quality. Dustin, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Put the links there. My letterbox. I want more followers. I think I'm a good writer. Dustin Rhymes. YouTube, Mr. G Movie Reviews, and Twitter, Duster.
All right, people. Big episode tonight. Big one. Big big one. House of the Dragon, season 2, episode 6, entitled Small Folk. Eli, we knew this was going to be a banger episode just from, the trailer at the end of last week's episode. Like, oh man, just the fallout, it continues to get crazier and crazier.
Oh yeah, there is plenty to talk about this week.
Yes, indeed. All of that and more on tonight's episode of Dragon Watch. Stay tuned.
My brother was a slave to his omens and portents. Anything to make his feckless reign appear to have purpose. What are we going to do about it?
Did you really think that you could just fly about the realm, trying to steal my brother's throne?
Beasts make us kings. Dragons did.
All right, Eli. So, season 2, episode 6, Small Folk. Big emphasis on this title, as we used to do back in the Talking Thrones days. We put a big emphasis on the title, which is that obviously it is capturing the thoughts and minds of a population of the Game of Thrones section that really, frankly, has almost always been ignored by the higher-ups, that being the small folk, obviously. And in today's episode, we see some of that retribution start to go as Rhaenyra starts to utilize one of her more underutilized assets as well through the use of Mysaria, who, wow, that connection. Did not see that one coming, to say the least. That one was that was not in the books for sure.
Nope, that was definitely a big shock to my eyes as well. I'm sure we'll talk about that as we get later into the episode of the breakdown here. But yeah, man, that was definitely the shock of the episode for me, among other things. So.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Among other things as well, we've been talking up the last couple of weeks, sowing in the seeds. It finally happened, and for book readers, it happened exactly how we knew it was going to happen. For people who were not already familiar with what was going to happen, oh boy, some dragon fire to say the least, but also some, a How to Train Your Dragon moment at the end, if you will, to compensate for it, as we'll get into as well. King's Landing, things are of course not great. We also finally got a quick insert from the other Lannister twin that Jefferson Hall gets to play. Fun fact, did you actually know that Jefferson Hall was on the original Game of Thrones?
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, he portrayed the knight from the Vale, and if you remember, all the way back in the first season, who was potentially the one who gave Jon Arryn the poison wine and then was mysteriously killed in the tourney the next day. Yeah, that was Jefferson Hall.
No kidding.
Yes, obviously they brought it back around all the way. And what's called, but as you know, Tylan Lannister is not the only Lannister he plays. He plays twins, and so we got Tylan's twin Jason as he arrives at the Red Fork, mustering up the Lannister forces. So it's kind of continuing to show that despite the blacks have been greatly weakened here. They really have. The Greens are mustering up all their forces. There's also talks throughout this entire episode of the force that they're mustering up at Highgarden as well, and as well Alicent's fourth son Daeron, who is yet to make his appearance, but is kind of being talked up as being like the next big guy. So what are your thoughts on kind of like just the looming battle? Obviously, we're seeing more and more the realm descending into chaos. What are your thoughts on like kind of the brewing conflict of war going on right now?
Oh boy, I mean, it's both sides have their work cut out for them, to say the least. Obviously, yes, the Greens hold the throne, but not necessarily the hearts of the kingdom, I think is the best way I could sum it up, right? We're kind of seeing how, the city is kind of descending into, chaos, right? People are starving, right? And I think that scene where they're just kind of carting the lambs along, getting ready to feed the dragons, kind of sums everything up perfectly, right? Where they're caring more about the war effort and keeping their own power than providing for the very people who kind of are the whole reason they have that power to begin with, if that makes sense.
Agreed.
And yeah, I think that, seeing it from the eyes of Hugh Hammer, right? I think, again, even though we've only seen a little bit of him in each episode so far this season, but he's really starting to come into his own. And right,
they're really putting the emphasis on him. We're putting the emphasis on Ulf as well in this episode. Really, like, I love the eyes of the small folk that we're getting through King's Landing. And like when the riot breaks out later on, obviously once the ships arrive, oh man.
Oh, 1000%. I feel like this show is doing so much better than the original Game of Thrones show, at least for portraying the kind of how the small folk live, at least to a degree. I mean, we see bits and pieces of it, but
right,
it's never at the scale it was,
I guess this being really the first time that like actual members of the small folk have been like real characters in the show and not just like backdrop cannon fodder, because think about it, right? Really the only small folk that are main characters in the original Game of Thrones show are the Brotherhood without banners. And even then, it's like they're really outlaws, so I don't know if they really count, But we never really
or
spent
anyone at the wall.
Exactly. We never really spent this much on the ground time with small folk. So the fact that we kind of get that through characters like Hugh and Ulf, obviously, and then we'll see obviously how that continues into the next couple episodes as well. It's kind of crazy that we only have 2 episodes left after this. That's nuts. What's it called? I was talking also about Aemon before as well, and how he is solidifying his grip, to say the least. He is just like telling everyone
We're losing it.
Yeah, he's like, Jason Lannister thinks to summon me like a dog. He will march when I say to march. He tells Kristen Cole, he's like, look, you're taking your forces and you're marching now. We can't afford to wait. We can't afford to give Daemon the time. What's it called? We can't afford to give Daemon the time before he attempts to before he attempts to muster the Riverland forces. So we got to take care of that, nip that in the bud. And then obviously, but then also the biggest thing is like, yeah, I'm not riding out to meet you on Vhagar until I choose to, And then the biggest thing is he's like, Alicent. He looks at Alicent straight up and is literally like, yeah, what are you doing here? And just dismisses her straight up. And also, he's making the right choices. He tells him to send word to bring Otto back to King's Landing as well, to kind of replace him as hand. And there's a funny moment where Larys Strong thinks that he's going to get it for a minute there. So, man, King's Landing, always so much fun.
But yeah, no, 100%. I think everything that was going on in King's Landing was interesting to say the least. I know I'm loving kind of Alicent's arc, right? Where she's really just sinking lower and lower. And honestly, I'm all for it because she kind of deserves it. But at the same time,
it's she's more so realizing her position. And it's just like, Aemon is, I mean, I love what he's doing, obviously, as a ruler, but at the very least, he's as Alicent seeks to remind him, it's like you're still letting everything from your childhood determine what's going on right now, So, like, at the very least, could you, like, stop? I guess but I was very touched by her conversation with Gwen, honestly. I really was. I thought that was really touching. It's like, shows the signs like, oh, they are human beings and they did, like, grow up together as brother and sister, ultimately. And obviously the way that Gwen talks about Daron in a very caring manner, it's very clear that the two of them are close, that they spent a lot of time together. And I'm interested to see how they like hype up Daron's entrance into the next season, whether he pops up at the end of this season or whether they save him for next season.
Yeah, if I had to guess, he probably won't come around until next season. But obviously, we're kind of seeing them plant the seeds for his character to come in. And obviously, for anyone who has read the book, we know he does end up having some kind of impact later on down the road. So very interesting to see them talk about him because we haven't really had any word or haven't really seen him or anything since pretty much when he was a baby that first season, if I remember correctly, right? So
yeah, I think so. I think he was in that first season. But yeah. So moving on to Dragonstone. Oh man, just nothing but a disaster here. We get the first attempt at the taping of the season. I do have to correct myself, and I'm correcting myself on the air because that's what I do. For the longest time, I thought the dragon that came out was Silverwing, but it turns out it was Sea Smoke. And I don't know about you, but like, they basically took Sea Smoke's design and just replicated Drogon's. That's pretty much what they did, Like, that's the sense that I'm getting from it. And obviously, we see that, they choose Sir Steffan Darklyn, obviously, who is the member of the Kingsguard, to attempt to be the first one to do it. And, well, we see how that turns out, huh?
Yeah, I mean, let's be real here. We kind of all saw it coming. But
Yeah.
No, of course, the first attempt was never going to be the easiest, and obviously, for showing us right, for the sake of stakes, it's, you gotta just have someone bite the bullet, and But I think for anyone maybe who hasn't read the book, they maybe are starting to piece together, how all these side characters we're getting to know are going to eventually tie into the story here.
Most definitely, yeah. especially given that we are also getting some potential character replacements, because obviously they've been building up Hugh, they've been building up Ulf. We see at the end of this episode, I love how it's literally like a reverse Pokemon hunt where Sea Smoke literally just like kind of like casually flies around and like bats at Adam, and Adam thinks that obviously that he's gonna kill him, and so he runs in the woods, and Sea Smoke just lands in front of him and just like is like, I choose you, Pikachu. That's like my new human. I thought that killed me. That was the funniest part of the episode to me, especially knowing what happens. And obviously, if you look at the trailer, in the next episode, you see obviously he's going to be the first to join Rhaenyra. And also, we're finally getting Vermithor next episode, which I cannot wait. But especially because like the process of like seeing Hugh and Ulf and how they've been built up and seeing how that's going to affect like how they end up taming Vermithor and Silverwing, it's just music to my ears. Anyways, what did you think of the Sea Smoke Adam moment?
I thought it was pretty well done. I did think it was a little corny because I mean, we'd only met him a handful of times this season, and then obviously I understand the fear of all the other characters around him, but like, did we really think the dragon was going to kill him? Come on, I mean, he's got
I know
Valerian blood. Like, I mean,
well, he doesn't know. He doesn't necessarily know at this point.
Yeah, true, but I don't know. From my perspective, I guess it wasn't really a moment of high stakes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. But it was still a fun moment, and obviously it was a necessary moment. I did feel bad for Sir Stefan Darkland, but like after a certain point, like I knew exactly what was going to happen, so I'm just like fast forward, and like just went to the scene where like the dragon inevitably burned him, and I'm like, damn. Even I love how the one dragon tamer even knew to like slit his own throat rather than just like be burned to death.
Yeah, the Valyrians are very cultured individuals.
Yes, they are.
I'm sure it's a very old practice. And
yes, they are.
I love how they don't outright tell us either. It does, I think, great for the world building.
So obviously, I want to cut ahead to Daemon at Harrenhal before we cut to I think the last couple of big three moments. So Daemon and Harrenhal, he finally basically is like, okay, he's basically told by Alice Rivers instead of fleeing, is like, listen, why don't you like for once stay in conflict with demons? So that's what he does, So. What did you think of? So that's another surprise cameo. I love that, like the big moments from this episode that everybody's talking about. They're gonna miss the one big surprise cameo, which is obviously the return of Paddy Considine as Harry. In Visions. Like you knew that after a certain point, like okay, they brought back Millie. You know that they're going to bring back Paddy as Viserys at some point. So what did you think of those scenes? And Daemon like finally choosing to like embrace his problems instead of running away from them.
Well, it was great to see him. I mean, in my opinion, he's standout of the first season. But I think it was nice, obviously, kind of revisiting that scene with him on the Iron Throne where he's accusing Daemon, right, of the, did you say it, right, the heir for a day spiel. But then we get another scene that we had never seen before with him, like, kind of kneeling over his dead wife's body, right, and, Daemon being there to comfort him. And that's a scene we had never seen before.
Right,
so
in a time when it didn't happen. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
If that even happened.
Right, like we don't know if was Daemon there, like was it just him crying alone, right? And
we don't know.
It's really interesting to kind of see that play out, and with the character development that Daemon's had, would he have comforted him?
Yeah, exactly. You don't know how it would have happened, honestly. But I do like that. I do like how much character development Daemon is getting. Honestly, I really do, because it's in a way it's kind of the only way that he would have been forced to confront his demons, honestly, because otherwise they never because honestly he would have just kept dealing with and abusing people in the real world, so it never and honestly never would have worked. And like Alice Rivers, the fact that he like doesn't immediately pull out a sword and cut off her head is already showing growth on his part, honestly. And while I'm not saying that this is going to entirely atone him of his actions, I do think that eventually he can be redeemed. And I think that he can come to a point where he will be where he will be finally able to kind of, be able to go out with grace, if you will, honestly. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree. I mean, Daemon wasn't necessarily always a bad character. I mean, he killed his first wife. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah,
yeah. By the standards of this world, it's like, doesn't that happen like every day?
Yeah,
it's bad to say, that's
pretty
bad
much.
But I mean, Daemon, obviously a very conflicted individual, where we kind of see he's always wanted this love and approval, but at the same time, kind of wants his own power and and ambitions. It involves hurting the ones he loves, and I really like that. It's like, how much is power worth to him, and that's very much where I think he's in the process of figuring out. So
yeah,
I think he probably will make the right decision in the end, but I feel like there's enough ambiguity with his arc in the books that there may be some room for some surprises.
Yeah, especially given that like this episode basically confirmed that they're making a major change from the adaptation, which we'll get to in a little bit. But
100%.
Yeah, definitely. And that's going to be really interesting, especially given how obviously that arc goes in the books as far as those next things, as far as the next steps, I should say. So what's it called? I know these scenes with Damon and Harrenhal have been under critique a little bit, but honestly, like as I keep saying to everyone when it comes to these shows, these scenes serve a purpose. So, moving on to that, the next big reveal, honestly, is when Mysaria basically executes her plan, where they basically start shipping off crates of food to the citizens of King's Landing, which obviously causes a mass riot when they immediately blame Alicent and start proclaiming Rhaenyra the true queen. So once again, their plan to utilize the small folk is working properly. And as is often Aemond is often criticized, as Aemond, of course, gives the small folk no thought, which is that, like, look, you need some peace, you need some stability at home if you want to maintain a good front. And unfortunately, that is just not the case right now, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. I think there is a scene I want to touch on real quick, which was the scene with a couple scenes involving Aegon this episode, and kind of how he's beginning to heal over, right? We get the scene with him and Aemon, and the scene with him and Larys Strong, which is kind of what I want to talk about more than anything. And I really loved the kind of the talk that Larys gave Aegon. I thought it was like really profound, and it kind of humanized his character a little bit, where we always thought he was like this, the stereotypical kind of creepy, kind of crippled advisor, kind of always scheming guy, right? Willing to do the dirty work. But, we kind of see life from his perspective for a little bit when he's kind of talking to Aegon about his injuries and kind of how he's never really going to be
Emmy-winning scene, if you will, from Matthew Needham.
Oh, I thought it was. I mean, you could see just with his eyes, especially the acting was phenomenal.
The pain on his face.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and just how he like, the tone in his voice kind of changed throughout the scene. I thought it was magnificent.
Yes, it was an excellent performance and an excellent demonstration overall from an actor who may have been a little overlooked kind of as the replacement Varys, but he gives like kind of, a lot more humanity, I think, and a lot of more of his own individual style, I should say, to that character in order to make it not such a, not such an easy, cheap throwaway. So now
sorry.
Yeah, no. What were we going to say?
Well, I was going to say what I just think is so interesting is now it seems like he's almost willing to play both sides a little bit, where he's serving.
Well, he knows he has to.
He wants to.
Well, he knows he has to, because for right now, Aemond is in charge. But obviously, he definitely feels like a stronger connection, a kinship with Aegon, if you will. Obviously, obviously for book readers who won't know, when Rhaenyra does eventually take King's Landing, it is only because of Larys that Aegon is able to be smuggled out.
Right. So it's very interesting seeing that friendship develop.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about it. Already the scene that is breaking the internet, Rhaenyra and Mysaria's kiss. So what if we make of this in terms of, like, is this simply a fleeting moment? Like, obviously because this was never a part of Rhaenyra's character in the first season. So this obviously being added now, it's kind of like, it is technically a retcon, but also, again, it could have always been a thing, But so I guess just kind of what prompts, obviously, the connection, especially considering that Mysaria feels to be, I don't necessarily know if she is in the same position, honestly. I guess just my whole thing is I don't know if Rhaenyra is in a position, honestly, to be able to. Man, we are just having so much fun tonight, aren't we?
Man, I don't know what to
What
make of it.
What the hell is going on, man?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. But
man.
Yeah, we were touching on the big kiss. Oh man.
Yes.
Honestly, I mean, you can debate whether it's in character or not. I feel like it's maybe a little more in character for Mysaria, just given kind of her background in the whole being a whore and all that. And then obviously, as we've learned in the first season, Rhaenyra is a very horny person, so it wouldn't surprise me if in, like, say, the 10 years or so between, like, episode 5 and 6, right, when she's popping all these babies out with a man who isn't her husband. And it makes you wonder if maybe, she did have that little bit of freedom to experiment. I mean, we could sit here and speculate all day. I guess in the context of just the scenes we've seen in the show, maybe, I guess it makes sense more now, because I was wondering to myself, like, why are they kind of getting so many scenes together these last few episodes?
I mean, it makes sense, obviously, as far as what they were building to, but I was still just like, I don't remember that being set up.
I think the actual connection between the two could have been built a little stronger.
Right. And especially given the sense that, like, especially she's supposed to have this connection with Daemon, but the fact of the matter is we only see them together for like 2 episodes before, like, she kind of just goes off and does her own thing.
Right, and that's you can argue that's one of the big criticisms of season 1 because it was just trying to set up so much, right?
Right.
From they only had so much time to work
Right.
with,
Which
and
I
obviously,
personally loved and I thought they did a great job with, but I understand that was a point of complaint for a couple people.
oh, I mean, when you have to cover like close to like 25
Just about 20
years
years, yeah.
in 10 episodes, right? I mean, that's a big ask, and the fact that they did it as well as they did, right, is
Yeah,
still speaks,
for real.
how seriously they are taking this project. But when you do something like that, inevitably some things are going to be skipped over, and I think kind of you know that side of Rhaenyra, maybe could have built up a stronger connection with her and Damon, at least more towards the end of season 1 when they are finally married and
Yes.
having their own children and things along those lines.
Yes, especially given that I believe that that what's it called, originally she is the one that orchestrated Blood and Cheese in the book, which
Right,
obviously that didn't happen in the show.
right.
So now obviously the other big one that I wanted to talk about, which again it's a small scene but is kind of getting overlooked. So obviously we saw finally Adam claim sea smoke. We knew that obviously Hugh and Ulfa, we've been talking them up as far as when they claim Vermithor and Silverwing, but there's one other dragon that joins the dance as well. And that's the wild dragon Sheepstealer, which we
Yep.
finally saw a hint of in this episode. But in the book, Sheepstealer is claimed by an unknown random character named Nettles that comes in out of nowhere and tames it. And I believe that for the show, this was a rumor during filming that they were originally going to include Nettles, but at the last minute they made a shift where they're like, okay, we're going to pull a Gendry swapping him in for Edric Storm, and they're going to have Rhaena tame Sheepstealer and join the dance, riding Sheepstealer in all the
Really?
battles. I've heard that, and this episode solidifies it for me.
I think so too. I think so too. I think this would be a good scene to talk about because, well, I'll let you lead. You clearly had something you wanted
Well,
to say.
mostly just about the fact that, like, okay, I like that it's giving Rhaena as a character a little bit more something to do, because in the books, Rhaena
Right.
kind of does ultimately serve as this caretaker for the boys, really. And the fact of,
Right.
the boys are sent to Pentos, so she kind of like is out of action for a majority. And kind of the only purpose that she really serves for the rest of the dance is just hatching one of the last living dragons, And then obviously, so I like that they're actually giving her a little bit more to do, and they're kind of swapping her in for Nettles, especially
Yeah.
given that, like, my only concern with that is, will unfortunately, obviously with the Damon Nettles connections that emerges. But if anything,
Is Damon going to fuck his daughter?
well,
That
but
is
no,
the
but
question.
if anything, I found like an even better solution away from that, which is that, like, simply when Rhaenyra decides that none of the dragon seeds can be trusted, and she kind of has a little moment of madness, Damon is like, well, I'm not gonna kill my own daughter,
Right.
and that's
Right.
when he like sends Rhaena away, and that would make even more sense as far as leading up to that sect of the story. So I think them setting that up here, I thought that was pretty interesting, honestly, and I've really,
Eh,
really I think that might have been my favorite moment of the episode, aside from the cheesy, corny, sea smoke claiming Adam scene.
No, for sure. I honestly, now that because I didn't know that was a rumor swirling around. I guess I can absolutely see that making sense, especially considering how little that her character kind of does in the book, right? Plays a role.
Right.
I think they're, I mean, you have kind of all these side characters floating around with not a whole lot to do for a good
Right.
majority of them. It makes sense rather than just like have another
Introducing
one
a
kind of
brand new character out of
right.
nowhere.
I feel like
Right.
making use of what they have for the sake of the TV show is maybe the best way to go. So I can absolutely understand why a change like that would be
Right.
made. And frankly, if there are any changes that can be made from the book that still impact the story in a meaningful way, I'm all for it. Right?
Exactly.
I've got a pretty open mind that comes to this. I mean, when after you read the book, you still kind of have to have an open mind, right?
Right. Especially given that the book leaves so much open to interpretation as well.
Exactly. Like so much of it is ambiguous, and again, we don't actually get the perspectives of the characters involved. It's just an old guy telling us what happened, right?
Pretty much, yeah. The only other scene, obviously, really that's of major importance in this is Corlys and Alan. Obviously, Corlys attempted to
Right.
promote Alan and him refusing, obviously, before he's being scoffed at by Adam. So obviously, as we now know, with Adam's, elevated status as a dragon rider and dragon tamer, that's going to greatly affect, obviously, Corlys's position when it comes to elevating his two sons to official Valyrians, obviously.
For sure.
Because right now they're just unknown bastards. So I'm wondering if that's going to change. Obviously, especially as we know, Alan will eventually succeed Corlys as, the new lord of Driftmark. So yeah, just your thoughts on that scene before we wrap up and get out of here.
Oh, I'm very excited because I think obviously we know how much these two characters are going to play a role in the coming story. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen when obviously we're seeing what's happening with the blockade and everything, and we finally got.
And
our
also
hints.
the big thing too, they mentioned the gay abandoned and the triarchy, both of whom.
I was just going to get to the triarchy. We're finally
we're
roping
setting
that back
up
in.
too.
And
what did you also?
excited.
So that has to, I'm actually glad that you brought that up. What did you think of the decision, obviously, for them to make that Eamon's idea and not Otto's?
I mean, I feel like it's not really a huge change from the book.
I kind of liked it, honestly.
No, it makes Damon seem more intelligent, right? And I think like
Eamon.
I mean, or wait, sorry.
Eamon.
All these names.
Oh man, how many times can we screw up the names? Check mark. We got our quota in for this episode.
0 weeks without messing up Targaryen names.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh no, I do my best. I'm just trying to remember all these names, and it's late. I haven't slept much over the weekend, as you know.
Oh yes,
so...
as we know.
as we know. Yeah, but
yes.
in terms of, I'm excited to see Otto kind of come back into play. I know it seems like he's right with that scene with Alicent. She's been trying to send him letters and everything, and he hasn't been responding.
He's just not responding.
Very Tywin Lannister-esque of him.
Yes, very petty.
Kind of to be that way, but obviously we do know he does end up coming back into the fold, and it's kind of, he still impacts the story whether he's there or not, and I kind of like that because he really is kind of the guy that holds everything together at times.
Yeah, he really is, honestly. It's kind of sad how he keeps getting dismissed by different kings, honestly. But we shall see. We shall see where things go. Obviously, we know where things are going. But again, things are only heating up. This is a very, very good episode. Very important episode as far as setup goes. Eli, what do you give this episode out of 5?
I'm going to give it a 4. I really had no complaints. I have no major criticisms. I thought the episode was very well paced. We got to see just a little bit more from each of these characters that we simultaneously love and despise. So like I said, I think we're getting set up for a very interesting finale to the season in terms of the dragons, in terms of the war, in terms of new character relationships that we previously didn't know about, that weren't in the books. So it's like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. And not a bad episode this season so far, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I agree. This season has been really consistent. Only 2 weeks left. Only 2 episodes left. That's absolutely insane to me. But these next 2 episodes are going to be bonkers. It's bananas. I give this episode 4.5 out of 5. I had a really good time with this episode.
Solid.
This is probably my second favorite after the 4th episode, obviously, which was just iconic. So, Eli, with that being said, thank you once again for coming on. All technical difficulties aside, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Yeah, you know me, folks. If you want to find me, you can follow me at E_Holicky45 on Instagram. And that's all I got. So.
And you guys know what to do with me. At Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. At Official Talking TV Podcast across all platforms. Tune in tomorrow morning for mine and Luke's review of Twisters, which I was able to see yesterday. All right, people. We finished with House of the Dragon and The Boy. So now we are wrapping up this weekend with the next great blockbuster installment of this illustrious summer, of this illustrious movie year. Twisters, plural, the movie, which is a continuation, sort of the 1996 action classic, directed by Jan de Bont and starring Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Carrie Elwes and a bunch of other character actors in a 90s blockbuster movie. This time we've got a real movie star vehicle starring the one and only, the Glenster himself, Glenn Powell, who is Hollywood's latest anointed golden boy. I don't know about you, Luke, but I'm still really worried because I'm still getting flashbacks every time I hear the word Hollywood's new golden boy to when they tried to do that with Sam Worthington and Taylor Kitsch in the beginning of the 2010s. Remember how that worked out so well for those two?
I don't, Dom. I was 10 years old, Dom.
Exactly. Proving my point here, exactly, is why I am skeptical, to say the least, about Hollywood's continued choice to pursue movies like this. All of that and more on today's episode of the Talking TV Podcast. Stay tuned. All All right, Luke. So, needless to say, this was another movie that you were very much looking forward to. You know, Twisters. It featured a lot of really cool, spectacular action. The trailer, I will say that, did show off a lot of really interesting effects as far as how they were utilizing the Twisters in person. And despite, obviously, the connections to the 90s classic, it doesn't necessarily, there's no references to it. You don't need to have seen it in order to really know what's going on going in. So you could...
No one is anyone's son or daughter.
No, you only get one quick insert, and it's a blinker you'll miss it cameo if you recognize them to begin with. So thankfully, at the very least, this is another summer blockbuster that, despite its dependence on the IP, does not require you to have seen the IP. And what I will say is that, for my money, I definitely think that this will strike well with the people who go to see it. I think that it will just be a nice, fun, get out of the house, enjoyable time at the movies. There's nothing inherently problematic or bad about it. The acting, for the most part, is all good. It's simple enough. That being said, I don't necessarily know if this is a movie that's made for me, but I want to hear your thoughts first. Do you think that this will be a movie that will actually I guess just I'm confused as far as I don't really see the traction as far as what is it about this movie that's going to get people to come and see it?
I think you hit the nail on the head. The simplicity of it. It's tornadoes, people chasing tornadoes, like American propaganda. A lot of people can get behind that. Someone said Top Gun was military propaganda. This is American propaganda. I'm moving to Oklahoma next week. But no, it's the simplicity of it. It's for all ages. Take your family, take your friends, take your date, whatever, and it's a lot of fun. Very, very charismatic cast. Glenn Powell, as we mentioned, on the rise. I think he's here to stay, unlike the ones you mentioned. Every week he's casting something. Daisy Edgar Jones is another perfect lead for this. And just the action of it. It's got that Top Gun tinge to it. You know, Joe Kosinski doing the story. It's got that summer feel to it. It's a summer movie, basically.
It feels like a summer movie. I'll give it that much. It's probably, of all the movies that I've seen so far this year, this is the first one that feels like a summer movie. And honestly, it's funny because I've been racking my brain this summer trying to figure out what is it about this summer season that feels so differently. Because I haven't hated a majority of the movies that we've gotten this summer, but none of them feel like summer movies. And I think this is the first one that really does, honestly. You know, we're coming off of two horror movies that came out last weekend. Quiet Place, which was, it's a quiet place. It's a dystopian future horror movie set in New York. Kinds of Kindness, which is an art house movie. And then the trifecta in May, you know, Fall Guy, Apes, and Furiosa, but none of which really felt like none of these movies really feel like the fun summer blockbuster that we kind of are promised, you know. And I think
the Fall Guy was the
Fall Guy's probably
if it came out later.
Yes. If like I said, we've talked about this, that the Fall Guy, the biggest thing that screwed that was its release date, because that's a March release or a July release. That fits perfectly for that movie. But I think the opening movie of the summer, I think, is what for whatever reason, there was something about that just didn't work for people. I'm still working on why that is. If it's just they've just become so accustomed to that release date spot being a Marvel movie, and this year it just wasn't. But whatever the case may be, that didn't work for that one. This movie, on the other hand, the other really interesting thing about this, as far as kind of what weirdly does but also doesn't make it function quite possibly as a summer blockbuster, is it's directed by Lee Isaac Chung, who, if people remember, kind of broke out in 2020, ironically enough, with his movie Minari, which was critically beloved, even though it was seen by all of about 5 people because it was released in 2020, and got a bunch of Oscar nominations, including an Oscar win for the grandma in that movie, Yao Yun-jun. And he went on to direct an episode of The Mandalorian in season 3. He also went on to direct, I believe he's also directing an episode of Skeleton Crew, the Star Wars show that's coming out at Christmas this year. So he got his training in the summer blockbuster feeling. And I guess kind of what's so interesting about this is that I'm like, oh, wow. For the first time, it feels like we have a director who actually knows what he's doing with a big budget. The camera is not super wonky and jonky. It feels well paced. The dialogue doesn't feel super stock. It doesn't feel like it's constantly setting us up for terrible, lame jokes, you know, and it actually feels like it has some substance. The characters actually feel lived in and well fleshed out. And weirdly enough, I do, even though I was looking actively for parts to not like this movie because there were a ton of tropes here that I'm like, oh, okay, seen that before. Okay, seen that before. You know, like the David Corn Sweat character. I'm like, okay, he's gonna be the generic villain, but the movie doesn't even really seem to care that much. At the end, they're literally just like, okay, we're just gonna drop him off in the middle of a field as the tornado to end all tornadoes is coming this way. You know, like,
He's Superman. He'll be fine.
do we care about what happens? No, not really at all.
I just do want to say it's a very small sample. It's a different role, but he's gonna be a great Superman. Just like even just seeing this,
Yes.
like
No,
he's
I was confident that he was going to be a good Superman when I saw him in Hollywood all the way back in 2020. But I also did recently just watch Pearl, and I saw him in that, and he was very good in that as well. So I'm excited to see him regardless. But I guess just for me, the thing that really stuck out as far as this actually being like a summer blockbuster that strived to be more than just mindless, dumb entertainment is the fact that every chance it gets, the movie does go out of its way to show that like the main characters are not just daredevils. They are genuinely trying to help people in middle America, which is, as we've talked about both on this podcast and in real life, is a section of the country that is drastically underserved and kind of overlooked by everybody. And the fact that this is a movie that's really putting a big emphasis on that, I think is kind of really nice. Not to mention the fact that it shows that like the main characters are trying to do some good, because this is an area of the country that it shows it's like, okay, like we're not just doing this, you know, just for shits and giggles, you know, like these things are actually really dangerous towards people and can really uproot people's lives and really, you know, cause disasters for them. And if we have a chance to make a difference there, you know, we should take that offer. We should take that opportunity. And I do kind of like that. I like that it gives a little bit more substance than the typical summer blockbuster, which kind of those were all just kind of going along the lines of Roland Emmerich and Michael Bay of like, let's just destroy as many things as possible and just have the characters talk about how they're going to outrun the things that are destroying everything. So yeah, I don't know. What was your take on that really?
I guess it's a more intelligent approach. Like these characters, like you said, they're not just idiots running away. They're solving problems. Like Glenn, like there's a scene in the barn where they go through the sciencey stuff of how to stop the tornado. I don't know how rooted in reality that might be. Like whatever, it's good enough for me. It's good enough for a movie plot. But yeah, it feels like it's been written with some thought. The relationships between the characters, like Daisy Edgar Jones's Kate, she starts off like just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna help the military or whatever, and then she realizes, oh, maybe I forgot why I'm doing this in the first place, and then it's like I think it's like a bit of a rom-com in disguise.
It absolutely 100% is a rom-com in disguise, but it's also got, again, it's doing, I feel like, what American blockbusters are trying to do now, which is that because there are so few individual genres that can make it on screen, they are essentially trying to turn the blockbuster in America into, it's got a little bit of everything genre-wise, you know? It's like we're trying to make these movies feel as big as humanly possible, and, you know, they've got a little bit of something, you know, there's a romance in there, and there's a little bit of action, and there's a storm chaser element in there. There's a disaster element too. So it's like, it's got like a bunch of different genres that it's playing around with. I should probably like say what, because I realize that we've been talking about this movie for a little bit. And I should probably say what this movie is actually about, considering that, again, this, aside from one quick insert, blink or you'll miss it insert from Bill Paxton's son, who appears in a very entertaining scene, I would say. And I would say that's probably like the only like generic Hollywood scene where they just take a blatantly unlikable character and just viciously kill them in the most brutal way possible, which is that Daisy Edgar Jones, who is the main character in the movie, portrays Kate Carter, who's working in Oklahoma, what's it called, as a storm chaser, because they're attempting to test out what they're attempting to test out means of taking down tornadoes by launching barrels of sodium polyacrylate in an attempt to reduce its intensity and secure funding for research. However, after an incident in the beginning of the movie in which her entire crew is killed, she retires to New York until 5 years later she's recruited by the only other surviving member of her team, Javi, portrayed by Anthony Ramos, in order to return to Oklahoma and team up with his new company in order to try and once again test out this new radar tracking technology that they've been working on. And along the way, she ends up running into Glenn Powell, Tyler Owen's character, who is a daredevil, you know, do or don't, what's it called? Pulled up by his bootstraps YouTube team, along with his team, as they attempt to go in and take out tornadoes by shooting off fireworks in the middle of it. And as these two teams, you know, compete in order to get more, in order to see who can take down different tornadoes. They discovered that, oh, maybe they don't have that much. Maybe they have more in common than they thought, ultimately, as they eventually have to team up in order to take down one of the biggest tornadoes that anyone has ever seen. So already off the bat, I'm like, okay, they're trying to come at it from a slightly more sciencey angle. You know, they're trying to what's it called? They're trying to already show that, like, okay, this is legitimate. You know, we're trying to do good. So and I think that of all of the different movies that like kind of have fake science, I don't know, this is the first one that felt like that this is the first one that felt like it kind of actually, you know, the science feels legit. Like I haven't actually had a chance since I saw this movie last night to double check and fact check the science to see if it actually if it actually is legit. But I don't know. This one felt like there was some slightly more thought put into the science aspect of it, you know, whereas it feels like in movies of the past, they would just be like, all right, it's just sciencey gobbledygook. Nobody's actually going to care about that stuff, you know?
Yeah, I think another example is The Martian, where they got enough things right that they can afford to have some leeway with other things. And I think they did their best in this one. They explained very meticulously how exactly the thing works. Like it takes the moisture out of the air or whatever, and that's how it takes it down. That was enough for me. I'm not gonna go and research about. I'm not a chemist. That's not my area. It's good enough for me. It made for great cinema, and I think that's all that matters.
So I guess my
in
question
a disaster
is,
movie like this.
yeah. So I guess my question is, could this be the final? Could this finally be turning around in terms of will Hollywood finally actually start to employ like real science in movies and also like stop treating the audience like morons? I don't think that's going to be the case, but it would be pretty cool if they did, honestly, you know, especially given, but again, this is a Hollywood blockbuster. It's got to have, you know, some romance in there ultimately. And I mean, Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones. It's funny because I actually have almost finished watching Normal People, which is the miniseries that aired in 2020 that kind of launched Daisy Edgar Jones and Paul Mescal, respectively. You know, Paul Mescal's another one who's got another massive blockbuster coming out in November, that being Gladiator 2, which is going to be interesting to say the least, considering that both Ridley Scott and Michael Mann seem to be directors that just cannot seem to get away from their old legacy projects. So, you know, now that Michael Mann is indeed confirmed to be working on the adaptation of the novel that he wrote, that is Heat 2, which is both the sequel and the prequel to the original Heat. So that's going to be interesting to say the least. I saw Daisy in, I think the first thing I saw her in was this straight to Hulu movie that came out of Sundance back in 2022 called Fresh, which I thought was very, very good. And I'm actually, I thought was one of the better movies that came out that year, in which she finds herself to be having been kidnapped by a cannibal who wants to, you know, cut off parts of her body and sell them. So did you get a chance to watch that when that came
I did.
out?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was very good.
Creepy horror movie.
Yes, very creepy. Showing
very,
off
very straight to Hulu-esque.
Yes,
but that's a good thing.
I don't know. I kind of would have liked to have seen it in the theater, but it was a very good movie.
Yeah.
And I like how it showed off Daisy's acting chops. I don't know. It was a little bit disconcerting hearing the Daisy Southern accent, considering that, like, I know that she's very clearly Irish and or British. I can't remember which one. And so I heard like bits of the fake of the real accent coming through in between the fake accent. But her and Glenn Powell, they have good chemistry. They're good together, honestly. You know, Glenn Powell, I will say this.
He has chemistry with everyone.
He really does. He really does.
Hitman, anyone but you.
He's been on a roll.
Maverick, I don't know.
He has been on a roll recently, honestly. And I do ultimately see. And the thing about him too is that he's not just a pretty face. He is actually classically, theatrically trained, and it shows, honestly. Like everything, like he's like, after coming out of acting school, he's doing all the tricks and tropes to, like, okay, this is what I need to do to be a good actor first and foremost. And he's not as concerned with being a star. Obviously, the being the star is helps, and he's having fun with it. Particularly the bit where him and Sydney Sweeney were pretending to be together in order to, like, you know, amp up the promotion for Anyone But You. Clearly, that worked wonders because that was like one of the highest grossing rom-coms that has come out in theaters in a minute. So, as far as Glenn Powell proving his movie stardom, I definitely think that the 3 for 3 that he's had so far, you know, between Anyone But You, Hitman, and now this, they definitely seem to be working, honestly. And as far as his next couple of movies that are coming out, he's going to be in He's going to
be in a couple shows too.
Well, he's going to be in I got to check. I don't see any shows upcoming, but he's going to be in the show Huntington, directed by John Patton Ford, which I believe is a Western. He's going to be in this movie. He also produced this movie, The Blue Angels. He currently is set to appear in Edgar Wright's newest adaptation of The Running Man. So it's going to be interesting. Glenn Powell's got a couple of interesting projects coming
there
out.
are DC rumors.
Yes, there are
following people.
Yep, there are heavy Batman rumors floating around.
I don't know about that.
Well, no, it would be funny if that did happen, considering that both him that would mean that both him and Superman are in this movie. So I think that would be pretty funny, honestly. Yeah, so I will say that again, for a movie that I had little to no expectations of going in, I have to say I was particularly surprised by not how much I enjoyed it, but I'm like, okay, that was enjoyable. I didn't completely hate every minute that I spent in this theater, which really, I mean, given the status of movies in 2024, I think that I don't know if that should be commended as the norm, but I'm hoping that things can start to get a little bit better once we get into the fall ultimately. So, there was one other thing. Oh, of course, the Joseph Kosinski thing. So, I mean, Joseph Kosinski obviously doing a do-over on the story that shows here clearly. I still don't know where I'm at with him as a director, because I still think that Top Gun, unfortunately, is the most overhyped movie of the century, if I'm being quite frank. But I will say that I'm realizing that more of that is that's more so Cruise for me than the actual movie itself, because Kosinski as a director I really, really enjoy. He hasn't made a bad movie in my mind. I even like that Spider-Head movie that he directed that came out like a month after Top Gun. I keep forgetting that I think that was like the early June movie, because I keep saying there was only 6 movies that really came out in the summer of 2022. And Spider-Head was one of the ones that kind of fell through the cracks because it was released straight to Netflix. And Kosinski was really only able to get that release off of the backing of Top Gun. But I love Tron Legacy. Only the Brave is a solid movie. I haven't seen Oblivion, but I've heard good things about that. And the F1 movie that he's doing that's coming out next year looks amazing. So, I mean, Luke, it's safe to say that Joseph Kosinski is slowly becoming one of your favorite directors. I think it's safe to say.
Oh, yeah. F1, I'm sure I will have many gripes about the story, and already the dialogue is making me scratch my head, but the racing will be undeniably quick. I think the fact that he'll be able to capture the speed of those cars for the first time, because you watch them in the races, like the POV shots, they don't look that fast, and you can stick a 4K camera on there, like even better, because they already stuck one camera in a race and they changed the color of the car in post, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, he did the story on this. I had that same feeling, so like I was leaning in for the whole movie pretty much, which was exactly what I was doing for Top Gun. And yeah, it's just something he just gets me. Right.
Yeah, he just understands you. He's like Michael Bay, but with class, and who actually like lets the camera just sit there and not like jitter around every 5 seconds and insert a bunch of cuts and explosions and lens flares. So yeah, no, I like Kosinski ultimately. Like I said, I like the fact that he's a director who understands how to do visuals really well. Like I do appreciate his visual sense and his visual style. It's just he needs someone who really grasps and understands the story. And like the fact that Tron Legacy, for me personally, is still his best movie that he's done is really kind of funny. And part of that also is the Daft Punk score, score of the century, if you ask me. But yeah, no, he's definitely I think making the rounds as well. And I'm very, very excited for F1 or Apex or whatever it's going to end up being.
Should have been called Apex. F1 is such a goofy.
Yeah, I don't like the F1 title. We really got to figure out which one of these marketing firms are coming up with these titles, because this is like the 5th one now where it's like, it feels like there was a better title in there somewhere, And yeah, so I'm just really, yeah. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, like I said, Twisters, it's weird because I talked about this on the pre-stream before we got on. It's fun. It was fine. It was enjoyable. There was nothing blatantly offensive about it. I was expecting something that was going to be a lot worse, but it was fine. But ultimately, like, I don't know. It's in the same way. It's the same spot as what I said last year, as far as this is the Mission Impossible spot, which is leading into next weekend, which is the money weekend. Because last year with next weekend was Barbenheimer, and this year it's Deadpool. So I don't know. I guess I'm still trying to figure out I'm still trying to figure out kind of where my thoughts are on this movie. And I guess just again, the response to it from the audience is really going to be what indicates as far as whether this is a success in my mind. Because I don't necessarily equate box office as straight being a success anymore. You know, it really isn't. It's like, to me, a success is how much a movie stands in the public in the public mind space. And really, outside of this being just another cool installment for Glenn Powell, as far as being a disaster movie that didn't suck blatantly, or that isn't like so bad it's enjoyable. And that's the other thing about disaster movies too, is that most disaster movies are remembered because they're so bad and so corny they're kind of enjoyable. Like the 90s, the late 90s from like 96 to 99 had so many disaster movies that in hindsight are just awful movies, but they're so enjoyable because of how cheesy and how dumb fun they are. And now I feel like with their attempt to make every movie quote unquote serious, I feel like that just kind of it allows the disaster movies to lose a little bit of their luster. Like, say what you will about that last Independence Day movie that we got in 2016 and how awful that movie was, but that movie, still being directed by Roland Emmerich, still had a little bit of like kind of that dumb winking fun, self-aware fun to it, you know, that really all those 90s blockbuster, all those 90s disaster movies had. You know, so I guess kind of that's where I'm torn on it. Like, this is still a good movie. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which is honestly a way higher rated than I was expecting to give it. But yeah, I don't know. I still kind of am feeling like a little bit like, what are we doing here? You know, but I feel like that is the case with all of Hollywood right now.
Well, leading up to Twisters, I watched about 15 disaster movies I hadn't seen before to make a little video disaster movie tier list, and Twisters made it all worth it because it is a 5-star, 3-star movie. I think that's the best way you can describe it. I'm thinking you agree with me.
That's the absolute. That's it. That's exactly it. That's the best description I possibly heard of it. A 5-star, 3-star movie. That's exactly it.
And that's good enough for me. If you film cars driving through fields, that's already like enough for me to really enjoy the movie. And then you throw country music in there. You throw Glenn Powell in there.
I think this is the first movie that actually made me that actually utilized country music, and I was like, oh, this is kind of awesome. Like, for the first time ever, I don't think I've ever seen country music that makes me go, okay, yeah, let's go. Because I wasn't exactly like fist pumping, being like, fuck yeah, when that happened. But I was also like, okay, I'm kind of getting into this.
It fits.
It does fit.
That's what matters. The little Wizard of Oz references, like naming the things Lion, Tin Man, and Scarecrow. I will point out in Latvia we have subtitles in Latvian for every movie. They translate Tin Man as firewood chopper. The whole word. And I'm like, okay, sure.
Oh man.
But I think my favorite like shot in the movie is when they're in the movie theater. It's playing Frankenstein. It's the scene where it's alive. It's alive. The screen tears off to reveal the tornado.
That was awesome. That was so
cinema.
Good. Yes. Oh man, the references to old cinema ultimately. Oh man, yeah. It was good. It was a fun time ultimately. So out of 5, what do you give it?
It's a big 5. I'll be championing this movie till the end of the year. If anything can challenge it for the number 2 spot, I will welcome it. But they will really have to try.
Yes, indeed, they will. And with that being said, people, that is it. That is mine and Luke's review of Twisters. Like I said, be sure to tune in next week for before Deadpool and Wolverine. It's going to be a big event. It's going to be a big stacked panel. I'm trying to bring back the Madam Web panel that we had, but no promises. Also, like I said, as you guys can see, summer blockbuster season is winding down. The Boys just recently wrapped this past week, as you can listen to in this at the beginning of this episode. We've also only got 2 episodes left of House of the Dragon as we begin to wind our way down towards the fall and the end of the year. But Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me strangely actively on Luk Reviews on YouTube. There's 2 fresh videos there. One about disaster movies, one ranking the X-Men movies before we transfer over into the new continuity. My longest video yet, maybe too long. I go on a James Bond tangent in the Dark Phoenix segment, which is certainly something. But yeah, there.
Absolutely. I can't wait to watch those videos myself. And as always, people, at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talking TV Podcast across all platforms. This episode will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as soon as this episode is finished and I have finished editing it. And as always, people, 12 seasons of a short film and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next weekend for Deadpool and Wolverine.